Danny Trejo with Donal Logue. This is my third time reading this book, and first of all, I don't really fangirl. I don't fangirl, and I definitely don't fangirl for like looks. Looks are just like not my thing. But I fangirl hard for like Danny and just a few other people. And obviously, if I've read a book 3 times, it's a good book because I'm a reader, okay? So it's not just like some stupid memoir. It's a hard, heavy hitter, but he's got like a lot of humility, and he's funny, he's silly, but there's a lot of good lessons in there too. Also, he's been in the recovery community for a long time, like 50 some years or something. Advance praise for Trejo. From ex to icon, Danny's incredible life story shows that even though we may fall down at some point in our lives, it's what we do when we stand back up that really counts. Robert Rodriguez. Trejo's tale as told by Logue, I think that's how you say it, it's Logue, Logue, is an inspirational study in the definition of character. Danny's journey of recovery and self-discovery is like a roadmap for those of us who are still struggling to figure ourselves out. It's an eternal struggle, okay? Even Danny says that. It's an eternal struggle. Trejo is a celebration of life fully lived with brutal honesty. Trejo shows us that we can turn our lives around, rewrite our most difficult moments into proud accomplishments, and transform our deepest pain into our greatest joy. Brimming with heart and generosity, wicked humor, and hard-won wisdom, Trejo reaches across generations, cultures, and borders to leave readers with a righteous, inspirational high. Danny Trejo is an American treasure. I've been a fan of his since I was 9 years old. He's had one of the most legendary runs in Hollywood history, in my opinion. If you're a fan like I am, this is definitely the book for you. Pete Davidson, actor, producer, and cast member of Saturday Night Live. Danny Trejo's unflinching, exquisitely written memoir, Trejo, unpacks his extraordinary journey from the hole at Folsom Prison and the notorious B section of San Quentin to dizzy the heights of leading roles in Hollywood movies. Trejo tells a story with grace, humor, and humility, as well as a terrifying immediacy during the more violent portions of his early troubled years. Adrian McKinty. That's the author of The Chain. The Chain, Adrian McKinty. Oh, he wrote The Island, too. The Island was really good. So, I prefer paperbacks if I'm going to read an actual book, but this one needed a hardcover. I don't even know if it comes in paperback. I will read you the inside, the little blurb. For the first time, the full, fascinating, and inspirational true story of Danny Trejo's journey from crime, prison, addiction, and loss to unexpected fame as Hollywood's favorite bad guy with a heart of gold. On screen, Danny Trejo, the actor, is a baddie, who has been killed at least 100 times. He's been shot, stabbed, hanged, chopped up, squished by an elevator, and once was even melted into bloody goo. Off-screen, he's a hero beloved by recovery communities and obsessed fans alike. Am I an obsessed fan? I might be. But the real Danny Trejo is much more complicated than the legend. Raised in a home, Danny struggled from an early age with H addiction and stints in some of the country's most notorious state prisons, including San Quentin and Folsom, before starring in such modern classics as Heat, From Dusk Till Dawn, and Machete. Now, in this funny and suspenseful memoir, Danny takes us over the peaks and through the valleys of his life, including meeting one of the world's most infamous serial killers in prison and working with the icons like Charles Bronson and Robert De Niro. I'll pause and I will tell you about what they mean by one of the most infamous serial killers in prison. Okay, let me sip my coffee. So, Danny was in prison. There was no way of avoiding prison with the childhood Danny had. But in one of his stints, he said he was like, I don't know if it was his roomie or just they were together at some point with this white boy, right? Goes, and this white boy told me that he was really good at hypnotizing people. And Danny's like, what? He's like, okay, I like to get high. Can you hypnotize me to believe that I'm high? And the guy is like, sure, okay. He goes and he took me through this like guided meditation. And he goes, I'll be damned. I'll be damned if I wasn't high as a kite after this guided, during and after this guided meditation. It felt like I had just got high. And Danny says, he goes, if this kid wasn't in prison and just wasn't going to be a career criminal, this guy could have went on to be, one of those hypnotists that pulls people up on stages and convinces them that they're cats and dogs. He's like, this guy had something. He had like magic. He said, but he did go on to be a career criminal. His name was Charles Manson. I remember the first time I read that part, it was on audio, and I was like, what? And there are so many stories like that in here. Like Danny, you cannot deny that there's some kind of force out there, like his God, our higher power, other people's higher powers, whatever. There's something, because the things that Danny has been through don't even seem real. They don't even seem, how could those things have lined up? There's so much of that in here. Okay, I'll go back. In raw detail, Danny recounts how he managed the horrors of prison, rebuilt his life after finding sobriety and spirituality in solitary confinement, and drew inspiration from the adrenaline-fueled heists of his past for the film roles that made him a household name. He also shares the painful contradictions about his personal life. So when they're talking about his adrenaline-fueled heists, the adrenaline they're talking about was drugs induced and adrenaline. Like Danny would go on month-long, 45-day long sprees, like crime sprees with his buddies or with new people that he would meet. At one point, in one of the stints that landed him in a long, or one of the sprees that landed him in a long stint, it was 45 days of just like left and right armed robbery, robbing stores, robbing people, taking their cars, taking their drugs. And they were so obnoxious and so brazen that they would say, like, I'm taking this and here's where I'm sleeping tonight. I'm sleeping at this hotel tonight if you want to come try and do anything about it. Like, they were just brats. Freaking brats, okay? Seemingly invincible. Danny was crazy. And don't get me wrong, I've had my crazy days. But Danny was crazy, crazy. And Danny would bite your freaking face off. So people were scared of him. But still, even biters usually get a clap back, but he really didn't, besides the law. And he'd had to do major time. I can't even believe if he was doing that stuff today, he would not be out right now. It was a different time, a much different time. And he also shares the painful contradictions in his personal life. So he got sober very young. Like, this guy has like 50 plus years sober already. However, that was just one piece of his life that he excelled at. He excelled at his personal choice of recovery, which was Alcoholics Anonymous. He took right to it. It was his new addiction, basically. Like once he learned how he could be sober, he wanted to share it with everybody. And back then, um, from the time like the big book was written, which was in the 30s by men, by white men, till up until this time in LA, like you were taught that if you knew somebody that was struggling, you go out, you find people that are struggling, and you bring them into your own house. Now that's not safe to do now, and it probably wasn't safe then. But also, who better to do it than Danny? Like Danny wasn't scared. Okay, so he probably didn't have a lot of like personal belongings that he was scared of people stealing. Like he was fresh out, you know. So he would go find suffering people, bring them to his house, let them stay, give them a meal, help them out, get them in the program, help them with jobs, work, whatever. But he didn't excel in other areas. He didn't examine other areas in his life. So he continued to have toxic relationships. He didn't even have his kid until 36, his first kid until he was 36. And he was still acting a fool, like in the streets, like as far as like cheating goes. And just, he was very immature. He was very emotionally immature and very machismo, which affected his love life. Like he was hurting others, but he was hurting himself. And he gets into that. And the deconstruction of that, which didn't start for him until his 60s. So it's never too late. It's never too late. And he knew he could not be happy. Like once it clicked, once his kids were grown and they were telling him about himself, you know. And once it clicked, and he was like, "What the hell is toxic masculinity?" And he was pissed. He was pissed. He's like, "I'm not going for this." But he talked to like some of his friends, including the guy that helped him with this book, and he was like, "Well, basically, it means that you haven't examined the culture that you were raised in and how it affected you and how it hurt you." Even though he was a great dad, he really was. But personally, his views on women and cheating and all that were still very much stuck in his toxic, abusive past. Like the men that raised him and the men that he was around, which were all gangbangers. They were all in trouble with the law. They were all cheaters. So he had not even cracked that can of worms yet. And when his kids grew up and his son was telling him about himself and his daughter was telling him like, oh no, Dad, you're not going to tell me what I can wear. And he was like, I guess I gotta reflect. Like, I guess, like, I've learned that I can reflect on this other stuff. I'm just now learning that I gotta start examining this shit. Anyways, to recover, he struggles to help his children in their battles with addiction and to build relationships that last. So all three of his kids, even though he was sober before they were born, all three of his kids, two of them were hard drug addicts. The other one, he was like, I felt like he was slipping here and there, but it didn't really like take. But the two were both H addicts, even though he was in the recovery community, even though he told them. Didn't matter. It's in their genes, and it's in the community, and it's among the peers. Okay, so he goes into like, if you're raising kids and you're getting into the teenage and adult years, and I mean, kids these days, they like, I hate to say kids these days, it makes me sound so old, but they're on a big kick that like, if your parents can't help you with everything, they shouldn't even have you. And if they can't get you out of every mess, and if they can't give you everything that you want and need, then they shouldn't have you. And like that pendulum swung so far. And there's like this group in the middle of boomers and teenagers right now that's like, shit, nobody raised us, and we tried to break a lot of our curses, but we didn't break them all. So we feel like, oh my God, like, okay, we did this, we acted interested in like raising kids, which was different. We had to learn that. And we put them into like activities and all this, but it's not enough, like, I don't know. I don't even really know how to explain it or articulate it, but there's like these boomers, which are our parents, and then there's these teenagers, and we're kind of stuck in the middle, you know. And these boomer grandparents, they're not the people that raised us. They're different now. They're good. They're trying their best to be good grandparents. So our kids don't know the hell that we went through. But anyways, a good chunk of this book is Danny explaining that he couldn't help his kids. The more he helped them, the worse he was making things. It was like they had to find people that they looked up to. He's like, it hurt me because here I am, Danny Trejo, and I'm going to these meetings and people are like, oh my God, Danny, help me, be my sponsor, help me. And he could help them. But his kids, nothing he would say would register to them. He's like, they had to find their own Danny Trejo. They had to find their own people that they were like, oh my God, yes, you, please, you help me. Couldn't be their dad. Redemptive, painful, and raw, Trejo is a portrait of a magnificent life and an unforgettable and exceptional journey through tragedy, pain, and finally success that will transfix and inspire. Danny Trejo is one of Hollywood's most recognizable, prolific, and beloved characters, famed for his roles in series like AMC's Breaking Bad. And I don't remember him in Breaking Bad. I need to rewatch Breaking Bad. If you know what season it is, let me know. Sons of Anarchy. Director Robert Rodriguez's global billion-dollar Spy Kids and Machete film franchises. Danny is also a successful restaurateur. He owns 7 locations of Trejo's Tacos, Trejo's Cantina, and Trejo's Coffee and Donuts in the Los Angeles area, and is expanding his Trejo's Tacos franchise nationwide. Visit DannyTrejo.com to learn more. And then Donal Logue. I know him from Sons of Anarchy, but I know he's been in a lot of other stuff. Donal Logue was born in Canada to his Irish parents and raised in Nogales, Arizona, and Calexico in El Centro, California. A veteran of more than 70 Hollywood films and hundreds of television episodes, Logue won the Special Jury Prize for Outstanding Acting at the 2000 Sundance Film Festival for Tao of Steve. He stays busy between creative projects with his trucking company, Island Trucking, and hardwood company, Frison Log Hardwoods in Southern Oregon. Visit DonalLog.com. Donal met Danny through AA, which is crazy. At the time, Donal was a janitor at an AA. So he was like cleaning the bathrooms when Danny met him. And I think Danny goes to be like, oh, I met you before you, like when they started talking, he's like, you were mad, or you were like, I met you and you were in a bad mood. And he's like, you would have been in a bad mood too if you were cleaning the toilets at AA. So there is pictures in here, and look at little Danny. He wasn't even. This is during that 45-day crime spree, I believe. Me and Joey Meyer, right after a robbery in the early 60s. We'd just gotten high as kites with the proceeds of the crime. I didn't know if I was pulling robberies to support my drug habit or shooting to support my robbery habit. Right? The chicken or the egg. That's what it is. It's the chicken. You don't know. It's a shame spiral. It's a both. You get high, off that. You get high off the the robbery, you get high off the crime, like you get high off the drug, like you just it's a shit show just like the movies, you know. I wish somebody would make a movie of Danny's Danny's life, and Danny could play his dad in it, like Shia LaBeouf did. So this is like a young Danny. Like, look at, they're just babies. They're just babies. This picture right here. This picture. Me and our dog Happy on the front lawn in 1951. My mom took this picture right after my Uncle David left. After he visited her one afternoon, I was trying to plaster on a fake smile because I knew there was something strange about that visit. There was. So this part of the story, it makes me cry. Like, I cry a lot when I read this book. His dad would be away for work a lot. His mom was like a stepmom, basically, because his dad took him away from his mom when he was little. And he got this woman to be a mom for Danny. Like, it wasn't true love. He basically was like, okay, this kid needs a mom. Will you marry me? And she did, but there was always some coldness, you know, because I feel resentment. Like, she kept Danny safe, but wasn't like a warm mom. She kept him fed, whatever. So anyways, that day, she told Danny to go outside. Danny's uncle David came over, and she goes, okay, Danny, you need to go outside with the dog. Shut all the blinds, locked the doors, and it was a long time. And when Uncle David left, he went out to his car, got in the car, and just left without looking at Danny. And Danny's like, so this poor kid Danny was like, I wonder if they like made a surprise for me in there, and that's why I couldn't go in. There's no surprise. He goes in, there's no surprise, there's nothing. He's like, okay. His mom takes him outside to take that picture. She's like, this is so weird. Like, my mom never takes my picture. What's going on? It's like, whatever. So his dad comes home, and like one day him and his dad are out running around. He goes, let's go stop over at Uncle David's. Let's like cook some meat on the grill. And Danny's like, Uncle David was just over. Danny was 7. Okay, 7. Uncle David was just over. And his dad's like, what do you mean he was over? When? He's like, oh, well, he was over. Mom told me to go outside and not come back in for a while. So his dad's like, okay. Well, like the next morning, Danny gets woken up, getting his ass beat up and down the house. He's sitting at the table, and his dad's like, why would you lie about that? Why would you lie about that? And his mom is like, yeah, Danny, why would you lie on me like that? They're both shouting at him. It's all Danny's fault. And Danny doesn't know what to do, so he's like, I don't know, I lied, I'm sorry. Like, I'm bad. I don't know, I'm sorry. So his dad's like, don't you ever lie again. Like, I've been there, and it's not fun. And like the next day, his mom continues to gaslight him. She cooks him like this meal. She sits him down at the table, and she's like, why would you lie on me? He's like, I don't know, I'm sorry. So that affair went on for 30 more years before it was all brought to light. It was, so like, if this started when their parents were 25, what are they, 55? 55, and it's still going on. The mom had a mental break, and so she was hospitalized. And remember, this is a different time. So the mom's in the hospital, they're recording her basically confessing to cheating for all these years. And for some reason, they play the tapes for Danny's dad. So Danny's dad has basically a mental breakdown because he finds out this is true. Neither of them apologized to Danny ever. Toxic. They never apologized to Danny. They even get back together, and Danny's just supposed to be like happy for them. It's tough, but at the same time, Danny's like, it's so hard. He's like, because now, like looking back, I can see that my mom and my dad weren't a loving couple. Like, she was almost hired help, but she was put in this house and kind of trapped there with no money, no car. My dad would be gone. She's like, and then there was me, like a whole human to take care of that wasn't hers. So granted, she shouldn't have got into that mess, but he's like, I have to forgive her. I have to. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough, but like, I have all these resentments too. So maybe one day I'll get there. The book, it touches on everything: toxic childhood, abusive childhood, cheating, bad relationships, recovery, crime, time, um, his Hollywood, his acting, his kids' addictions, his health. So if you want, I can do another. Cause look at, come on, I got a lot of meat. I got a lot of meat in here. I can do another whole video or two on this book. But he has, as a lot of people had back in the day when they were doing drugs, and the kind of drugs he was doing, he had hepatitis C. And he did go on to get the cure for it, but he was sick. Like, he thought that the cure was going to kill him. He's like, I was sick, so sick, but he had to work to support his family. So he's in the middle of getting all these treatments, and he talks about the projects that he was working on while he was in the middle of the treatments. He's like, you can go watch these movies. He's like, I was putting a good face on, but I was dying. So, and I know not hepatitis C cure looks like, but one of my pregnancies, I thought I was dying. I really did. I would be in the bathroom, like, crying at work on the floor of a dirty workplace, and then getting back together, going to work, taking another, like, it was terrible. So, like, I just, like, brought back all that. And then he like, later on, probably because of the hep C, because that is heavily, it's hard on the liver. So he got blood work done one time, and he was called back in. Like, the blood work's all messed up. We got to do some more testing. He gets some more tests done. There was a 10-centimeter tumor on his liver. Okay, 10 centimeters is a huge tumor. It's a huge tumor. And he's like, okay, what does this even mean? And the doctor's like, well, if you don't do anything, you're going to die. Got to start you on chemo, Danny. Got to get it down to a certain size so that we can do an operation, or you can get it on the transplant list. He's like, okay. Well, his ex-girlfriend was in the appointment with him, because he basically, at this point, he still needed a mom. Danny needed moms. And his ex-girlfriend's like booking in his appointments, like, okay, we'll do this, we'll be here, I'll get you to your appointments, whatever. So he does start his chemo, and he's still working his ass off to support his family, his child support, all this stuff. He's working through chemo, and I think the reason he didn't lose his hair was because, I've never heard of this before, but they were doing the shots they were knocking him out and doing shots directly into the tumor, which I don't know. I guess that's a thing. And he went back in one day, after a round of chemo, directly to the tumor, and they did a scan, and they were like, whoa, Danny, this is half the size it was. I think it's dying. And you might not need a transplant or a surgery. He's like, okay. They're like, let us do one more just to really knock this sucker out. Like, do what you need to do. And he talks about basically that, like, you go in for your tests. The tests aren't going to invent any diseases. The tests are just going to show you your reality so that you can deal with it. So in his case, that was his reality. It was cancer, a cancerous tumor. And you just stop looking stuff up, listen to your doctors, make it to your appointments. He was like, at one point, I was feeling so sorry for myself. He's like, I was just having a horrible day, feeling sorry for myself. And I went out in the living room, and there was a St. Jude's commercial on the TV. And he's like, I felt like a total asshole. Here I am. I've had this whole life. I'm in my 60s, and I have to face this. There's little kids doing this. He's like, goes back in. He has that one last shot, and he goes back for another scan, and basically it's like a shriveled little nothing. They were like, "You're good, Danny. We can't explain it, but you're good." And he's like, "Okay, I'm good. That means that I'm supposed to help more people." Like every blessing in Danny's life, every time he got off the hook, every time he got out of like big trouble, he went on to help a ton of people. So, anyways, my nose is running and I need to be done. I forgot to do housekeeping, so if you're still there, thank you for watching to the end. If you haven't hit subscribe, please consider doing so. If you have, think you have, just double check. Hit the like if you like, leave a comment. Anything nice, anything related to the video, let me know if you've read the book or you want to read the book. Other than that, as always, if you want to support the channel, my tip jars are linked in the description box. No pressure whatsoever. I know times are tough, but every little bit does